I'm really thrilled you're hanging out with us today. Look, I want you to start by just thinking about your own mind for a second. Have you ever felt like your brain, well, like it just absolutely doesn't come with an off switch? Like you're constantly taking the temperature of the room, picking up on those subtle shifts in people's moods, or noticing these tiny little details that literally everyone else seems to just walk right past. If you're sitting there nodding your head right now, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we're diving deep into this really fascinating concept, the burden of the hyper-aware mind. We're going to unpack what it actually means to have the psychology of someone who is, quite simply, way too aware.
So what actually happens when you can't stop noticing everything? It's pretty exhausting, isn't it? Imagine your mind is this incredibly powerful, highly sensitive, old-school radio antenna. Now, most people, they've got their antennas tuned to just a single local station, right? They hear the music they want to hear, and boom, that's it. But if you have a hyper-aware mind, wow, your antenna is picking up every single frequency, all at once. The music, the static, the police scanners, the random interference from 3 towns over, you're getting the whole shebang. You are receiving all the signals all the time. You catch that slight hesitation in a friend's voice. You notice the weird hum of the refrigerator. You pick up on the heavy subtext in what was supposed to be a casual conversation. Honestly, it's brilliant. But, as we'll see, it can also be incredibly heavy.
Let's jump right into section 1. What is hyper-awareness? I want to take this nice and slow because, honestly, this is incredibly validating for so many people. The hyper-aware mind is fundamentally defined as the psychology of people who are simply too aware. Notice that phrasing there. It's an actual, recognized psychological state. This isn't just you being overly sensitive or overthinking things, which, let's face it, are labels people throw around way too unfairly. This is a specific, well-documented psychological framework. Your nervous system and your cognitive processing are fundamentally dialed up to 11. You're operating with this heightened baseline of perception. So if you've spent your entire life wondering why you feel totally drained after just existing in a busy environment, well, this right here is your answer. Your brain is literally doing 10 times the observational work of the person standing right next to you.
Moving on to section 2, the burden of knowing.
So why exactly does this amazing superpower of perception create so much friction on a daily basis? Well, let's look at the typical mind. It basically has a built-in bouncer at the door of its consciousness. That bouncer's main job is to filter out background noise so the brain can conserve energy. It just ignores the flickering light bulb, the complex social dynamics of a crowded room, or the underlying anxieties of a coworker. It just stays focused on the task at hand. But the hyper-aware mind? Yeah, there is no bouncer at the door. Every single piece of stimuli gets VIP access straight into your processing center. You're completely unable to tune out the static. And this brilliantly illustrates why it's called a burden. It takes a massive amount of caloric and emotional energy to constantly process this unfiltered stream of reality. You aren't just seeing the world, you are absorbing it in absolute high definition, and there's no mute button.
Which brings us to section 3, the psychology behind it.
All right, so how does this actually play out in your day-to-day life? It breaks down into a few distinct psychological experiences. First up, constant processing. Your brain is essentially a supercomputer that refuses to go into sleep mode. It's constantly analyzing, predicting, and evaluating every single variable in your environment. Second, absorbing everything. See, you don't just observe stuff, you internalize it. If someone near you is stressed out, you don't just notice it, your body actually mirrors that stress. You absorb the emotional climate of a room the literal second you walk into it. And third, the mental weight of the burden. This is that inevitable fatigue. When your brain is constantly processing and absorbing, the mental weight really starts to pile up. It's kind of like walking around with a backpack full of rocks that you didn't even realize you were collecting.
The burden of the hyper-aware mind. Man, it's a heavy phrase, isn't it? It really acknowledges that while seeing the world deeply is a beautiful thing, the sheer weight of holding all that information, all those nuances, and all those unspoken truths, well, it's a profound burden. It is a very real and very heavy load to carry.
Let's wrap things up with section 4, the hyper-aware reality.
So, how do we take all this abstract psychology and actually apply it to our everyday lives? Well, the main thing I want you to take away from this explainer today is this. This is the psychology of people who are too aware. It's a structural reality of how your brain operates. And by understanding this, we can finally shift from feeling totally overwhelmed to feeling empowered. You aren't broken. You absolutely do not need to be fixed so that you care less or notice less. You simply have a high-performance, hypersensitive cognitive engine. And hey, just like any high-performance engine, it requires specific maintenance. It requires you to consciously build in some downtime, to recognize when your antenna is overwhelmed by static, static and actually give yourself permission to step away and unplug. Understanding this psychology is the very first step in validating your own complex, beautiful, and yes, sometimes exhausting experience of the world.
And that brings us to our final thought for the day. Is your awareness a burden, or is it just a misunderstood tool? Look, yes, the psychology rightly acknowledges the heavy mental weight it brings. But a tool, no matter how heavy it is only a burden until you learn exactly how to wield it. Because once you master it, that hyper-awareness becomes your absolute greatest asset for empathy, for creativity, and for really deep connection. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I'm going to leave you with that question to chew on. How can you start using your hyper-aware mind as the incredible tool it was always meant to be? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today. Keep noticing those details, but remember to give yourself a little grace along the way.